I'm having a wonderful conversation, and the subject is fascinating with American composer Jeremy Haladyna about his April 2021 Centaur CD. It's the third CD in a series. It's probably going to be five or six anyway, I should think. CDs. The title of this particular, the third in the series, is called Pok-Ta-Pok, Sky Games from the Mayan Cycle. And the preceding two CDs were Mayan Cycle, kind of, that was the first CD, kind of an overview of works you had at that time been composing in this series. There now are like 35 or something.
36.
36 pieces you
Just
have
finished
composed.
another.
As this cycle starts to take shape, Mayan Cycle was the first. The second CD was Mayan Time, Mayan Tales, and that title pretty much speaks to the whole thing. You know what I mean? About we've had this talk, you know, about the Mayans and their mathematical skills, their brilliant scheduling, their understanding of the universe around them, and all of that, and how they lived and operated by mathematics and the harvest cycles and all of that good stuff. Let me give everybody out there a couple of I'll kind of run quickly through some of the pieces on this CD. Again, focused on tales, Mayan tales, segments from the Mayan zodiac, and so on. But here are some titles that just whet the appetite. Pok-Ta-Pok, we've mentioned. It's a version for piano, clavichord, as ball playing teams. We'll talk about that in a bit with live percussion. 8,000 Gods Half Diminished. I don't know. I get all spellbound by that title. Monster Owls. Let's see. Your Organ Sonata, which also has a narrative about Mashimon. I now realize I need to do the sh on the X. Mashimon, a saint, if you will, god saint. That's a very interesting story. This is from 2017. Stingray Spine Cadenza from Kepl for a two-manual harpsichord. We've mentioned this idea of plucked strings is exactly the imagery. Everybody's seen that skeletal outline of stingrays, the amazing, and there's a whole story there. I'm glad I had dinner earlier tonight. You'll tell that story if we have time. We get to it. The Vision Serpent. The Vision Serpent. I mean, the titles of these stories alone are thought-provoking and quizzical. Quoth the Jade Mask, and you know we all kind of have an idea of a Mayan jade mask. For cello, wonderful piece for cello and piano. And then the last piece on the CD, Maya Zodiac from 2016 for soprano. And you and I have talked. This features all of the solo artists, if you will, on this CD are all UCSB faculty or even students at the time over these years of recording. How close am I?
Well, except Virginia Crone.
Except
She's
for Virginia Crone, you're quite right.
she's on a, but
Yeah,
she helps us immensely.
yeah. Virginia Crone is the cellist, and she
Yes,
operates out of a more Los Angeles and Ventura County level.
exactly.
Has quite a good reputation with contemporary music and so on. I was thinking of Alison Bernal. We've talked about her soprano, Alison Bernal. Just a brilliant talent who was at UCSB. Um, so a little bit about Jeremy, and then let's get going because we've got a lot to try and cover. Served on the music faculty at UC Santa Barbara. I've seen you here and there and forever because I've been here for quite a few years myself. Served on the music faculty for 29 years at UCSB, and then took over from your wonderful teacher William Kraft. We've mentioned how lucky has UCSB music department been to have some of these incredible worldwide, world famous faculty. Your teacher, William Kraft, you took over the UC Santa Barbara Ensemble for Contemporary Music in 2003 through 2019 when you retired and are presumably trying to wrap your head around the remaining 17 CDs you're going to have to put out on this Mayan series. Couldn't resist that, sorry. But I mean, some of your other teachers, just so folks can get an idea, Carl Kort, I think I pronounced that correctly, Eugene Kurtz, Jacques Charpentier, Peter Racine Fricker, another colleague at UCSB or a faculty member there once upon a time. I remember him well. John McCabe, Joseph Schwantner, and so on. And you are kind of have been a commuting member of the faculty at UCSB all these years, which I find kind of really fascinating because I kind of for a while did a Santa Maria to Santa Barbara commute. I don't want to waste too much time, but what I'm thinking, Lompoc is a lovely little city of about 40,000 people. It's just far enough away from the crush and burn and craziness of things, except of course for the Air Force Base and everything else that's about to boom there in the next 20 years. But you know, you have it's a quiet little place that I would think would be either terribly boring or ideal for a composer. Why don't
Well,
we
except
start?
for the rocket launches. It's that's
Uh-huh.
something.
Yeah, but that could inspire, could it not?
It does. It does.
Yeah, I would think. As you know, the Vandenberg, everybody out there, the Vandenberg Space Force Base uh, is doing its thing. Yeah, launching satellites and people and everything else. So let's get back to the CD. And again, we've talked a little bit, but this is a tragic idea that I think is worth my quoting you from the CD. The great fervor with which the conquest, that is to say the Spanish conquest of Mexico and South America and just about everything, erased Mayan musical sources. And artifacts and stela that we're going to talk about and the language and everything else. It's just a miracle that we are beginning to find this stuff. Some of the textual sources remain, but most of those too, in the case of the Maya, you say, were burned. So just this wholesale decimation of an ancient culture that was in fact, and we're going to go there, highly sophisticated, and that's a subtle way of saying way more sophisticated than the Spaniards at the time. Okay, I've said it. It's done. Why don't you? Where do you want to start? We could go through kind of piece by piece, which I think might kind of be best because the narrative is so important on everything. Yeah.
I think one place to go by way of starting point is that everybody that's looked at this culture a while, and I certainly have now for a while, comes away with the same overriding impression, and that is that nobody on the face of the earth has investigated time as thoroughly as this culture. So you can take any one of these 3 CDs that I've put out, and there is somewhere on there evidence of the fact that the Maya were fantastic timekeepers and time philosophers, so that here you have a culture like the ancient cultures of the Near East, like India. Here's a culture that thinks time is cyclical, not linear. Okay, that's very important. And when you understand that key fact, you understand a lot about the Mayans. So it's quite a thing. And the more you get into their timekeeping and their way of viewing the heavens, the more that you see that they were amazingly sophisticated. I mean, they could predict any lunar eclipse or solar eclipse accurately. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, among other things, creating
Yes.
364 plus days in a year, calendar year. This, it goes on, and we had no clue, right, until we
Well,
found.
like you said, the Spanish come here, and what are they interested in? Gold. That's it.
Yeah,
know,
hello.
It's fair to say that the religious friars that followed them had loftier motives, but I mean, the first people that came, they were raping and pillaging. That's what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. That's what troops do. You know what I mean? That's what armies do.
Yeah.
And then the history is written by the victors. We've had that conversation also. So little do we know. Look at North Americans. We know so little about our Native American cultures. Confederations of tribes, histories, long judicial systems, just amazing. Let alone Mexico, modern Mexico itself. 1808, Mexico forbids slavery. In 1808. Okay. First piece, because we got things going with the games, the big ring, the round, and I want you to talk about visiting this site, Pok-Ta-Pok, which is the name of the game. Yeah, it's called Pok-Ta-Pok.
Which I think is onomatopoeia. I haven't been able to come across any translation of it other than the sound pok, 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 pok. Because it was
that explains everything.
Yeah, it was a hard rubber ball making contact with stone, or the human body. When it contacted the human body, it could be quite serious, and that's why this gentleman, he's wearing all that padding to protect himself, especially his hips and his buttocks. He's protecting himself from that hard rubber ball. So
and he looks like the Firestone guy. Looks like he has rings of tires around his body.
You mean the Michelin Man, Dan?
Thank you, Mitchell. Sorry, my branding is all messed up. They'll send letters to me, I'm sure. But you just hit on the point that is delicate about capitalists and capitalist society. For hundreds and hundreds of years, it's all been about the gold. It's not been about the culture.
Well,
Okay?
these I hate to tell you, but these ball players were they were like the rock stars of our NFL today. And they didn't just play in one Mayan city. They made the rounds and they were making money. And guess what? The Mayans were betting on them big time.
Thank you
And
for destroying a myth I had created in my own head.
and it was quite an operation, these ball game players and the betting and wagering that went on.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see if I have anything to say about. I'm just kind of looking at my notes as I listen today, just so that we can get an idea of. Well, in my notes that will later somehow I'll put into a written form, but all kinds of moods, fits, colors, echoes, densities, and distinct. How do you do it? I ask myself, how did he do it? And that is the mastery of your compositional technique. Right? And mixing and making things happen, that percussion track, for example.
Well, I think it's a little unusual in that some composers today, they only deal with electroacoustic media, okay? Mm-hmm. So there isn't even a live person playing anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm basically blending. It's kind of like when you set a jewel in a setting, when you take a gemstone and you put it in a setting for it to make a ring out of it. I'm taking maybe a live player and I'm putting that person, or Alison Bernal, for example, the soprano in the last track, I'm putting her in an electroacoustic setting, but it wouldn't suffice to just have the whole project be inanimate sounds. I don't do that. I'm always mixing and blending the acoustic world with this electroacoustic world. And in that final track, there are actually sounds of howler monkeys that I recorded on site in Palenque, which is one of the great Mayan cities. Those are the real howler monkeys that I recorded. So, I mean, that goes to show that it isn't just computer stuff. It isn't that at all.
Oh yeah, and the howler monkeys are just one of dozens of different sounds that you have recorded and use in fascinating ways, and in clearly recognizable ways, but also in fascinating ways, other ways throughout the CD. So for example, speaking of in this case, Pok-Ta-Pok is, thanks for that, because I've been thinking, Pok-Ta-Pok, what does it mean? What does it mean? Now I get it. It's speaking the sound of the game itself, which again is very sophisticated, frankly, but also just to give you an idea that just a kind of about my notes, so we can talk the music as well as the stories. There's this big shocker punch to open the piece. That, at least that's my impression, and it just is like pow, like the opening kick, if you will. I don't think they kicked, but like the opening kick of a football game or something. And there's this sports an analogy, however. I don't know, however mysterious and ancient. Interruptions all the time from percussion. The music is fascinating, certainly Western, I say to myself, because we haven't made clear. There's not a single note in this CD that isn't your original writing, correct?
It's true, yes.
Want to make clear.
That having been said, Pok-Ta-Pok is in equal temperament, which is a Western system. And I'm obliged to do that because if I want people to perform anything, I can only go so far with respect to the tunings that I've invented. It's the rare person like Alison Bernal who can come into the studio and sing in my tuning and do it in 90 minutes, Dan. I mean, that your average person can't do that and won't do that. So I think that's also a reason why you don't find all this orchestral music here, because orchestras play by and large in equal temperament, especially in the United States, okay? So they're not the ideal medium to express the Mayan calendar, because in expressing the calendar in sound, I have to get out of equal temperament. So It's kind of a compromise. Some of it is in Western pitch and some of it is not in Western pitch. But Pok-Ta-Pok began as a two keyboard piece, so it's in Western pitch. But that, you know what that sound is that you referenced, that pow?
Yeah.
That is the Mayan Big Bang. That's the Mayan Big Bang, because their universe begins with the shell of a turtle cracking open, and out of that crack comes the Mayan maize god, the god of corn. Okay, the Mayans call themselves the people of the corn. Okay, that crack, go up into the heavens and project it downwards. That crack is the ball court. That is the playing field. It's an I shape, just like
it is. Yes, yeah.
That's what it is.
Now I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, it just goes on and on.
Yes.
Anyway, you can hear the teams running, of course, this interplay left and right, manic moments, extremely descriptive, clearly, and as we are clear, this is a narrative CD from beginning to end. And later we'll talk about these tunings that you have, scales that you have invented in the 10th piece when we get to that. 8,000 gods, half diminished, from the Kepl stela, if I understand correctly. So this is from a text. This tale is from a text, right?
This is the most political piece on the CD, because what's going on here is that this king is marking a decade, and they didn't mark decades, they marked periods of 20 years, which the Spanish called a ventana, okay? And the ventana is their equivalent to a decade. But anyway, he's halfway through at 20 years, and he's saying, look at what I've done, and look at what's just happened. My grandfather has died, but I'm part of the important lineage that was established in X year by the guy who came from Teotihuacan. And so it's kind of like a broadsheet of a newspaper of everything that's going on at the point where this thing is carved. And
King Stormy Sky.
Yeah, King
is
Stormy
complaining
Sky.
about his reign and the troubles he's had, I guess.
Well, he's actually trying to legitimize himself, is what he's doing, and he succeeded.
And in my notes just about the sounds that you create, and remember, these are just my impressions. You may be thinking, what an idiot, that wasn't what I meant. But wonderful, almost outer space sounds. There's this. Well, we kind of touched on this, like universes crossing distantly throughout the whole CD. There's this understanding of great depth of history. How am I doing on that one?
Good. And you know what the toughest thing in doing that piece was? It wasn't the news items that the king wanted to proclaim. That wasn't the hard part. It was the 8,000 gods half diminished, because every day to the Mayans was its own god. So what you've got here is the 8,000 days of 20 years in their system enclosed about 8,000 days. Well, we're halfway through, so there's 4,000. Okay, so I had to put exactly 4,000 blips in that piece. And I had to figure out a way to atrophy the piece so that it starts bing, 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 and then at the end you're getting bing, 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 bing. And if you listen carefully to that again, you'll hear at the end of it, it's not like it was at the beginning. It sounds like it's having trouble, because we're half spent at that point. The day total is halfway gone at that point.
It's all a complete mind seduction and a great seduction, I say about this piece. Anyway, everything. I can't think of anything. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else, but I think we pretty well covered the piece.
Yeah.
And again, I guess what I did want to deal with, because when I first came into this preparation, I thought that maybe, and you do, in fact, but let me see if I can explain this clearly enough, and then you can straighten me out on it. I thought maybe, I'm thinking of Microcosmos, Bartok, and I had heard somewhere that the piano pieces are in the exact structure of this stellar structure. So part of me was wondering whether you went into are in this project for that, the dissecting the mathematics. On the other hand, you've just explained that there are certain things you just have to do. I mean, this piece, this story speaks about 8,000 and so on. How does it? Did that make any sense? I
Yeah,
thought it was
the
a question.
mathematics are really, really, really in evidence in the Maya zodiac, the final cut. And that's like a Gorbachev doll where you have this much time inside of this much time inside of this much, and they're all to scale. So that if you play that piece, it's like one age of the zodiac complete. And if you played it 13 times in succession, you would get the whole tour around to scale. That is, we've miniaturized the actual amount of time down to this amount, where a period of 20 days is about 1/50th of a second. And when I started, I said, you're not going to hear 1/50th of a second, but you know what? I could. So it started to make everything possible then, because that smallest unit is extrapolated out to 2,080 years, and that is the 13-minute point in that piece where you have actually made one complete zodiac sign, one of the Mayan zodiac signs, and they had 13, not 12.
Okay, let's jump down there while we're on Maya Zodiac, which is the 10th piece, right? 10th piece on the CD. Hang on. I guess this is the piece. I'm just again looking at my notes, but this is really the big one. This is like 13 or 14 minutes. What is it? Does that also have to coincide with this formula?
Yes, it does, because it has to be 13 minutes of legit time, and then I added a coda of a minute and a half to close the piece.
Okay.
But those 13 minutes are exactly to scale.
And this is, speaking of all the multimedia and everything, you throw the whole kitchen sink in here, this is one of those, and you I think even suggest somewhere in the notes that what you need to do on Maya Zodiac, my big piece of brain
It's
of
kind
brain
of new
message.
age. It's kind of new age. That is, you just let it roll over you.
Just
right?
let it roll over. You say, just lay down on your back on the ground and just stare into the sky for an hour, and you'll get it.
It's a clock. It runs like a clock.
It's just amazing. Again, just throwing words out that I wrote down. Full of mysteries and magic. It's like a walking, talking, and then I hear, while I'm writing this down, then I hear Fortuna, because you use voices, right? And other things like, you throw words. So in other words, it's just this huge puzzlement, if you will, this speaking from 18,000 different colliding universes or something. It's just amazing. And as you said, you added a coda, and I heard the word falcon, and then sometimes the words are said in Spanish, I presume, and then in
every sign this is Allison that does it. Every sign is in 3 languages: English, Spanish, and Mayan. She gives the 13 signs are done in all 3 of the languages.
So Fortuna, for example, is one of the signs, as is falcon that I heard, right?
No, I'm not sure.
Fortuna doesn't quite work, does it?
Fortuna is not one of the signs, so you may have been hearing something. Falcon is the falcon, but I'm not sure what you were hearing there.
But again, that really, really, really fascinating. And then this galaxy of sound, I'm saying to myself here, this would be the coda, I presume, seems to float away.
Yes, exactly.
Hugely. It's like help. The sci-fi. Forgive me the insult, but it's like close encounters of the third kind. You know what I mean? Because throughout there is kind of a message. There is this sense of this just huge, enormous galaxy hovering over you. You know what I mean? In other words, what you create musically with sound is absolutely stunning. And you're right. This one is one that they should play this one to me at the nursing home repeatedly.
But you know what I like about the ending is what better way to end it than with just the soprano, the solo soprano.
Yeah.
If you've got one, you know that's the way to use it. I think it's just.
And what a voice! I remember this. Give me her name again. I can't.
Alison Bernal.
Thank you. Alison Bernal was at UCSB. We've had this talk earlier. She sang the lead in Copland's "The Tender Land," and you and I have spoken about that. That all by itself. With I think it was Benjamin Brecker who brought "The Tender Land" here. I think to UCSB. The idea of a university music / opera department producing of all the standard repertoire that is part of the training and all the rest of it, but "The Tender Land." It's amazing, and her voice was just stunning. Okay, I think, what have I missed? What do you want to talk about? in terms of a piece I just overlooked. I've told everybody I think that the Organ Sonata is mind-blowing and fun and just amazing, and it should be played a whole lot more because I've never heard such large pipes. The 32 footers or whatever. In other words, the piece grumbles a lot. It's very, very exciting and very interesting. Have I insulted you yet?
No, that's the strength of that little organ that we have. Is the pedal reed stop is amazing. And
in Lottie Lehman Concert Hall, right? They have a sweet little organ, the pipe organ.
It's the Flintrop organ. But if you could have seen me doing this, you would have been amused because the scratch turntable is right there on the bench next to me. So it's not somebody else. It's me doing the scratching while I'm playing with my feet. So it's so much fun.
And I'm going to have to re-listen to it again because, again, I read scratch turntable. I made a note, what's this about a scratch turntable? And then in listening to the piece, for some reason, it was just so perfect, I guess, that I just didn't recognize the sound.
Because when it goes instead of...
Oh, well, then that should have been obvious. I'll have to listen to it again.
That's the turntable.
Stingray, I think we've spoken about. I think what? Give us something. Either speak about a piece that I have neglected to discuss that's on the CD that you think is fabulous, or give me just a kind of an overview, and then we'll run it down.
I know you reacted earlier to Monster Owls.
Tell us, Monster Owls. There's a good one.
It's a wonderful story because this same maze god is appearing again in the context of the Mayan Bible, which is the Popol Vuh. And the Popol Vuh contains the story of how First Father, many equate him with the maze god, he is taken down to the underworld and he is vanquished by these evil lords of the underworld. And in order to get revenge, his two young sons, who are a pair of twins, they are going to go down and basically destroy the lords of the underworld and avenge their father. Well, guess who comes to get them? It's 4 monstrous owls who are deformed. And in this piece, you have an excerpt where 2 of these owls appear, and you hear their wings. By the way, they don't make any noise, so I cheated there because in reality, the wings of the owls don't make noise. But you hear them flying, and they basically come, and the mysterious background is in one of my 3 calendar scales. It's the Maya scale. So what's going to happen? They're going to summon the boys and their equipment. They're going to go down there, and they're going to win. And they're going to basically assure the continuance of the harvest and all of that.
More electronic sounds, I say to myself. Mystical floating effects, kind of scary.
Yeah, it is scary. It is.
The shriller vocal sounds got me. I'll figure that out some other day. It's an electronic piece, I ask.
It is.
Yeah.
But again, actual sounds are used. In this particular cut, I ordered owl calls from Kentucky that hunters use out in the wild to, basically call game, and it makes the sound of an owl. So it's not just the computer-generated stuff. The mysterious sounds that you're alluding to, those actually began as notes on ceramic ocarinas. Okay,
gotcha.
I sampled the ocarina, tuned the ocarina, and then I can manipulate it inside my pitch system. So it's not like this is coming out of computers. It's real sound. It's real sound.
Well put. Exactly. Quite right. And to remind us all about that. But let's see. Yeah, and I liked that piece. But so I got close in terms of the experience I had to what you intended. And you were mentioning about the sound of the wings flapping. Now here, just so everybody knows, we got time here still. This is a CD. You're going to love this. That will require many repeated listenings, everybody, because it reminds me of some famous dance choreographer, and he's one of those choreographers that involves a million tiny little movements going on at all times. And I remember asking him at some point, what is that all about? implying that the audience couldn't possibly pick it all up. And of course, the brain picks all of it up. And I sometimes think of, for example, these pieces have so much going on, and you know perfectly, you know, it's going to take a couple more listenings, but you know that I got it. If you get my drift, people get it. They hear everything, I do believe. What do you think about that idea? That the brain
Well,
and the mind.
if they don't hear everything, Dan, the hope is that they're intrigued enough to go back and listen again. You
But
know,
also that the mind gets it all, but one has to go back to so the mind can help explain it. See
I
what I
think a
mean?
psychologist would
Maybe.
agree that, you know, you're getting it in the subconscious realm, but in
Yeah.
order to really process it consciously, you need to hear it again. Yeah.
That's what I meant because
Yeah,
in Monster Owls, that when you mentioned that you did, didn't you, that you created some sounds that sound like wings flapping.
absolutely.
Okay. I think, and I'll have to go back and listen to it again, but I think I may have heard that, but I was thinking, what is that? Is that deep breathing? Is that, see what I mean? Maybe that swooshing, I was thinking that it was kind of some mystical imagery of a voice breathing heavily.
You
See?
heard it because swishing is the perfect description. You heard it.
Okay, so the old knocker, the plaque on the brain is not fully developed yet. Good, there's hope. Okay, anything else? And then I'll just do a quick overview on.
I hope that people will take away from it what I intended, and that is that I am just completely fascinated with this culture. I have been for 35 years, and I do this out of reverence because I find them so interesting and provocative, and I read scholarly books on them, and yet I'm so excited by what I read that I want to start a piece. So I don't know how long it's going to be. People sometimes say, how long are you going to go on with this? Well, it's been 35 years, so I don't think I'm going to quit tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'm having so much fun, I don't really want to quit.
And moreover, there may not be an end. You know what I mean? There isn't like an end point, is there? I mean,
There isn't
it's so
in the Mayan
huge.
of time, there is no end point. You know, people thought that, oh, 2012, it's the end of the Mayan calendar. And while dire things were predicted for that, no Mayan would have told you that that was the end. It was simply a very, very important signpost along the way. But they knew perfectly well, like I said, they already carved into stone periods of time older than the Earth itself. So they know very well that this is going on. Like you say, it's not going to end.
Yeah, and we mentioned this. I hope I'm not incorrect, but something about that 26,000 year cycle is something about the time it takes. God knows how they figured it out.
Constellations to go around the night sky.
Yeah, and as we've discussed on two or three other occasions, getting this film together, it's like, and Western culture thought it was way ahead of these savages.
I know.
That's horrible. Anyway, well, all right. So get your pencils out, everybody. We've been having a chat with Jeremy Haladyna, American composer, about his Centaur Records release, 2021. So it's up there and ready to go. Amazon, wherever. And by the way, I'll let you give your web address in just a moment. Pok-Ta-Pok, Pok-Ta-Pok, Sky Games from the Mayan Cycle CD, and it's 10 amazing journeys, amazing narratives, amazing musical interpretations of these narratives and journeys. This is just fabulous. Many, many thanks for putting up with me. and
Oh, it's been a delight, Dan. And I did want to say that
yeah.
not all these pieces have been recorded. So if you go to mayancycle.com, that's Mayancycle, one word, .com, you'll see the whole list of 36 pieces. I need to put the last one on there. Turtle Heart is number 36. But you'll see 35 of them listed. And I think in terms of how many have been recorded, I'm over halfway now.
Oh.
There's been material from which I never, ever thought I would achieve. So thanks be to God that I actually got that far. And I hope to go further with it. But I would love to achieve 2/3 of them or 3/4 of them.
Yeah, and moreover, thank God, you no longer have to teach, frankly. at an academic institution. So sorry. I hope you're not sending this to important people.
Well,
But you know, the pressure's off.
That you raise it, because really it was the teaching that enabled this, because I had the good fortune to write what I wanted to write, and I achieved that by teaching my little heart out, basically.
Okay.
And
Fair
so
enough.
then I was, you know, had the freedom to do such a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. That was a terrific comeback. I stand slapped. And you may now, in the privacy and quietude of Lompoc, get busy. You have some albums to create.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Thanks, Dan.
Bye-bye.